Welcome to the Human Archive. If you enjoy original science fiction stories about humanity finding its place among the stars, subscribe and join us for the next one. Now, let's begin. It is football. Senior Cultural Analyst Tavek Irohn arrived on Earth with 3 luggage cases, 11 active research models, and the conviction that he already understood human soccer. He lost the last item before leaving the arrival terminal. The Lisbon Orbital Transfer Concourse had been decorated so thoroughly for the coming World Cup that Tavek initially assumed some emergency signage system had malfunctioned. Flags hung from the balconies. Team colors wrapped structural columns. Departure boards alternated shuttle times with tournament schedules. A child in a green shirt was dribbling a ball around the legs of a patient-looking service robot while his mother pretended not to notice. Tavek paused beneath a holographic image of the World Cup trophy and opened his cultural brief. My preliminary study of human soccer. The woman walking beside him stopped. Tavek continued 2 steps before realizing his liaison was no longer there. Marina Okafor Silva stood with one hand on the handle of her luggage and an expression of mild concern. What? Football, she said. Tavek checked the translation display embedded in his wrist. It says soccer. Your briefing was written by Americans. Are Americans incorrect? Marina considered this with more seriousness than he expected. In America. No. Then who is incorrect? Yes. Tavek stared at her. Marina resumed walking. Most of the planet calls it football. Americans usually say soccer because they already have another football. Canadians use soccer a lot too. Australians have their own terminology wars. Some places switch depending on context. You are not going to solve this. Why has no planetary authority standardized the term? Because then what would we argue about before kickoff? Tavek marked his first note. Terminology dispute persists despite universal semantic comprehension, possible cultural inertia. Marina glanced sideways at his tablet. Do not write cultural inertia. Why? Because someone will read your report and think we're too lazy to agree. You are too lazy to agree. We are committed to disagreeing. Tavek altered the wording reluctantly. Outside the terminal, the city appeared to have developed a secondary circulatory system made of football. Flags hung from apartment balconies. Shop windows displayed national colors. A bakery had shaped pastries like tiny footballs. 2 construction workers in different national shirts argued cheerfully across an open trench while continuing to work. A tram rolled past carrying an advertisement showing 16 captains staring heroically into the middle distance. Tavek studied everything. The municipal decoration budget must be extraordinary. Half of this isn't municipal. He pointed toward a narrow residential street where strips of colored fabric crossed from building to building. Those residents. The city permits private citizens to decorate public airspace. Apparently, the Republic has survived. He pointed toward a restaurant whose outdoor tables were painted in 6 different national colors. That. Business owner. Government subsidy. Trying to sell beer. Tavek made another note. Marina snatched the tablet gently from his hand. You have been on Earth 23 minutes. 26. You are already making the face. What face? The one academics make before deciding they have discovered why everyone else behaves incorrectly. Tavek retrieved his tablet. I'm a cultural systems analyst. Yes, I analyze systems. And I am your liaison. My job is to stop you from confusing a spreadsheet with a species. Tavek looked out through the vehicle window. On a patch of public grass beside the transit lane, 4 children had made a goal from 2 backpacks. Their ball was scuffed and slightly misshapen. There were no officials, no sponsors, no audience, and no visible reason for the game to matter. One child scored. All 4 shouted anyway. Tavek watched until the vehicle turned the corner. He added another note. This one he did not show Marina. 22 people and 1 ball. 3 days before the World Cup began, Marina took Tavek to a football match that did not matter. At least that was how she described it. Tavek considered the phrasing suspicious. The match was a local exhibition between 2 clubs whose names meant nothing to him and whose supporters had nevertheless arrived 2 hours early. The stadium was small by World Cup standards, 12,000 seats. aging concrete, one end covered by a roof that had apparently been added later because someone had grown tired of rain. Marina introduced him to Thomas Ferreira in a pub across the street. Thomas was 67, compact, gray-haired, and wearing a scarf despite the warm weather. Tavek pointed at it. "Is that climate control?" Thomas looked offended. "It's the club's scarf. It appears thermally inefficient." "That's not what it's for." "What is it for?" Thomas considered. "To be a scarf." Marina covered a smile. Tavek immediately disliked how often humans did this. They frequently possessed reasons and then refused to explain them. Inside the ground, Tavek approached the match as a data problem. There were 22 players. 1 ball, 2 goals, and 90 minutes in which to do something with them. The probability of scoring in any given minute was low, possession exchanged constantly, and long stretches of play appeared to move sideways without producing anything Tavek could classify as an event. At 14 minutes, Tavek leaned toward Thomas. "Nothing has happened for 7 minutes." Thomas turned so sharply that his scarf struck Marina in the face. "Everything happened." Tavek looked at the pitch. A midfielder passed backward. "Nothing is happening now." "That fullback is too high." Tavek looked. He is standing approximately 9 meters beyond his previous average position. "Yes. Why does that matter?" "Because the winger has to cover him, so their midfielder shifted outside. Watch number 8. Tavek found number 8. The player drifted into open space. A forward ran toward the near side. 2 defenders followed. The midfielder turned. A passing lane appeared. The ball went through it. Suddenly, the attack accelerated. The opening became real all at once. 1 pass. Another. And then a shot curled just wide. 12,000 people groaned as one organism, and Tavek realized the 7 quiet minutes had not been empty at all. Tavek stared at the pitch. Thomas folded his arms. 7 minutes. Tavek opened the match replay on his tablet. He watched the preceding sequence from above. The attacking side had been shaping the opening long before he recognized it. Defensive pressure moved like flexible geometry around the ball, and runs mattered even when no pass reached them. One player could create space for another simply by going somewhere that looked useless until the defense followed. Tavek replayed the sequence twice. Marina leaned over. "You're smiling." "I am not." "You are." "I have identified hidden informational density." Thomas looked toward Marina. "Does he always talk like this?" "Yes." "Poor man." Tavek ignored both of them. The match ended 1-1. He expected disappointment. Instead, the supporters spent 20 minutes arguing about whether the result was deserved, another 10 debating a substitution, and then filled the pub as if nobody had informed them there had been no winner. Tavek found Thomas behind the bar later, pulling drinks. "Why did you come?" Thomas looked puzzled. "To the match." "Yes, because it was on." "That is circular reasoning." "It is not. The match was on." "So I came." "You did not know whether your team would win." "Obviously." "Then what outcome were you purchasing with your time?" Thomas stopped pouring. "Purchasing." "What did you expect to receive?" Thomas looked at him for a long moment. Then he jerked his chin toward the room. Noise filled it. Arguments, laughter, someone reenacting the missed shot with a breadstick. A child asleep across 2 chairs while her father debated midfield selection with a stranger. "That," Thomas said. Tavek waited. There was no longer answer. Humans were exceptionally bad interview subjects. Everyone has a team. Tavek spent the next week trying to classify football allegiance. He failed. The woman who ran the cafe near his residence supported Portugal because she had been born there. Simple. Her husband supported Cape Verde because his parents had been born there. Also simple. Their son supported both. Less simple. Until the 2 teams played each other, at which point he had a decision tree involving tournament position, goal difference, and whether his grandmother was watching. A university student from Scotland supported Argentina because her childhood hero had been Argentine. A retired engineer supported Japan because he had worked in Osaka for 6 years. A Nigerian-born French citizen supported France unless France played Nigeria, except that his eldest daughter supported France without exception because she had no loyalty. A taxi driver explained his hierarchy at length. Portugal first, Angola second, Brazil third, whoever is playing Spain fourth. Tavek turned from the back seat. Why Spain? The driver looked into the mirror. Tradition. What tradition? Not liking Spain. Marina laughed. The driver added, friendly dislike. What is friendly dislike? Very serious. Tavek wrote that down. Marina sighed. You are making it worse. I am recording native terminology. You're going to submit friendly dislike to the conquered. Correct. She leaned her head against the window. I chose the wrong career. Tavek's most frustrating interview occurred with a 12-year-old named Afonso outside a public training ground. Who do you support? Tavek asked. Portugal. Because you are Portuguese. Yes. Any secondary team. Argentina. Why? Afonso looked at him as though the answer were obvious. My grandfather liked them. Was your grandfather Argentine? No. Did he live there? No. Why did he like Argentina? Afonso shrugged. He liked the way they played. Tavek tried another direction. If Portugal and Argentina meet. Portugal. And if Portugal is eliminated. Argentina. If both are eliminated. The child thought. Maybe Senegal. Why Senegal? They're fun. Tavek shut his tablet. Marina looked pleased. What have you learned? Human affiliation models are unstable. No. They are conditional. No. They are irrational. That's closer. He looked at her. Your own allegiance appears particularly compromised. Marina stiffened. My allegiance is perfectly coherent. Your maternal family is Nigerian. Yes. Your father is Brazilian. Yes. You were born in Portugal. Yes. Which team do you support? Good football. Tavek waited. Marina smiled. See, coherent. Her communicator chimed. A message appeared from her mother containing a photograph of a Nigeria shirt folded on a bed. A second message arrived from her father. Brazil colors. Marina closed the display. Tavek said, Your family appears to disagree with your neutrality. My family disagrees with neutrality as a concept. A third message appeared. Her brother had sent a composite image of a half Nigeria, half Brazil shirt. Beneath it. Coward's edition. Marina blocked the screen with her hand. Tavek made a note. She tried to take the tablet. He moved it out of reach. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Tavek suspected his research might become enjoyable. Opening day. The World Cup began on a Thursday. Tavek expected a tournament. At 8 in the morning, he realized he had underestimated the noun. Lisbon had already changed. Office towers displayed match schedules in their lobbies. Schools had altered afternoon timetables. Restaurants dragged additional screens onto terraces. Municipal transit ran extra services toward public fan zones. Grocery stores had rearranged entire aisles around snack food and national flags. At 11, Lethry Vaughan called from the conquered orbital station. Tavek's research assistant appeared on his tablet surrounded by data windows. I have participation estimates. How bad? She blinked. Bad. Productivity disruption. Oh, extensive. Tavek sat straighter. I knew it. Global non-essential industrial output is down approximately 6% during simultaneous match windows. That is extraordinary. Public transport use is up. Of course. Household energy spikes correlate with kickoff times. Wasteful. Restaurant revenue is up dramatically. Commercial redistribution. Orbital station maintenance crews have requested schedule flexibility around 3 matches. Tavek stared. Conquered crews. Human crews. Of course. Lethry smiled. You sound disappointed. I am observing. You said football was too low scoring to sustain mass attention. It is. You have spent the last 3 nights watching tactical analysis. For professional reasons. Of course. Lethry sent him a prediction bracket. Tavek opened it. You have Brazil losing in the semi-final. Yes. Unlikely. You told me you were neutral. I am statistically literate. Marina arrived carrying 2 paper bags of food. What are we arguing about? Tavek thinks Brazil makes the final, Lethry said. Marina set down the bags. Oh, he's doomed. Tavek objected. I have not selected a team. You have a bracket. That is analysis. You argued with a commentator yesterday. The commentator ignored transition with. Marina looked at Lethry, beginning of the end. Tavek terminated the call. Opening ceremonies began that evening. At first, the match itself mattered less to Tavek than the city around it. People watched in apartments with windows open. They watched in pubs. They watched in plazas. A pair of mechanics had mounted a screen inside a repair shop and arranged chairs between tool cabinets. At one cafe, a woman told Tavek she did not care about football. She was wearing her country's colors. He pointed this out. My daughter made me. You are still participating. I'm eating. While watching. My husband has the remote. Tavek tried to classify her. She refused classification by ordering dessert. The first goal of the tournament produced a roar that rolled across several neighborhoods at once, loud enough that Tavek felt it through the floor. He went to the balcony. Windows were open everywhere. People shouted from different floors. Cars sounded horns. Someone fired a harmless burst of colored light above a roof. The scorer had never met any of them. Most would never meet one another. Tavek stood listening until the noise faded. Behind him, Marina said, You're making the face again. What face? The other one. I have only one face. No, this is the one where your theory has annoyed you. Tavek did not answer. The Americans call it soccer. Tavek's trip to North America briefly restored his confidence in language. The World Cup had spread matches across several host regions, and the cultural study delegation traveled to New York for 2 group stage fixtures. The first supporter Tavek interviewed used the word soccer without hesitation. Tavek nearly relaxed. I have finally reached a linguistically coherent population. Marina choked on her drink. The supporter, a man named Eddie, wore a United States shirt and laughed. Coherent? Buddy, you picked the wrong city. Within 10 minutes, Tavek heard soccer, football, futbol, and one elderly man refer to the sport only as the game. A group of Brazilian supporters called it futebol in Portuguese. 2 Nigerian Americans used football. A child switched between soccer with one parent and football with the other. Tavek turned to Marina. This is worse. It's beautiful. It is not. At a crowded fan plaza, Tavek found another American willing to explain. If I say football at home, my dad thinks helmets. Tavek nodded. So soccer distinguishes association football from American football. Yeah. Then this terminology is logical. Pretty much. Why do other humans mock you for it? The man paused with a paper tray of fried food halfway to his mouth. Because arguing is fun. Tavek stared, the man shrugged. We know what game we mean. This bothered Tavek. His culture used disagreement primarily to resolve uncertainty. Humans seemed perfectly willing to preserve uncertainty if the argument itself was socially useful. Later that day, he witnessed 2 supporters spend 15 minutes arguing over whether the sport should be called football while standing shoulder to shoulder cheering the same team. Their disagreement intensified after a goal. Neither moved away. Tavek added a note. Not all conflict indicates social fracture. Among humans, some of it appeared to be recreational, even affectionate, provided everyone understood where the invisible boundaries were. Marina read over his shoulder. That one you can keep. The first heartbreak. Thomas's preferred national side went out earlier than expected. The elimination came on a missed penalty in a match most analysts had expected them to win. Tavek watched at the pub. He had never seen a room become silent so quickly. The final shot struck the goalkeeper's gloves. The referee blew the whistle. Half the room stopped moving. Thomas remained standing behind the bar with both hands resting on the wood. Nobody spoke to him for several seconds. Then someone swore. Another person blamed the manager. A third immediately began arguing that the penalty taker should never have been chosen. An elderly woman near the window cried quietly. Tavek felt uncomfortable in a way he had not expected. The match had no material consequence for anyone in the room. Yet the disappointment was not theatrical. Thomas switched off one of the screens. He left the others on. Tavek approached cautiously. Are you all right? No. Tavek waited. Thomas looked toward the empty glasses. Ask tomorrow. So Tavek did. He returned the next afternoon expecting the pub to be quiet. Instead, it was full of supporters from another country whose knockout match began in 30 minutes. Thomas was serving food. Tavek stopped at the bar. I thought your team was eliminated. Thomas gave him a flat look. I remembered. Then why are you hosting another match? Tournament's still on. You are emotionally invested after your preferred outcome became impossible. Thomas pointed a spoon at him. You say things in the least enjoyable way possible. But I am correct. Unfortunately. A group at the far table called for him. Thomas started away. Tavek caught his sleeve lightly. Why keep watching? Thomas considered the question. Then he looked around the pub. Because there are still good matches. That answer was insufficient for Tavek's model. It was also obviously true. The sport survived individual heartbreak because the point had never been limited to personal victory. A person could lose the team they loved, complain bitterly, and still show up the next day because there was another match, another argument, and another room full of people to share it with. That evening, Tavek watched two countries he had never visited play a match he had no professional need to see. He told himself Lethri might ask about it. She did not. 90 minutes with strangers. The round of 16 was where Tavek lost neutrality. He would later dispute the exact moment. Marina identified it immediately. The fan zone occupied a broad public square bordered by old stone buildings. Screens the height of houses displayed the match. Food stalls lined the edges. Security teams managed entrances without separating supporters completely. Marina disappeared during the first half because she took the wrong route back from a food stall. This did not surprise Tavek. Her sense of direction was the only part of her professional resume he considered fraudulent. He found himself between 6 humans he did not know. One gave him fried potatoes. Another asked who he supported. I am neutral. The woman frowned. Pick someone. Why? More fun. I am conducting research. Pick someone. Tavek looked at the teams. One of them has superior defensive organization. Good, that's your team now. This was apparently binding. At 68 minutes, a forward was called offside. Tavek objected. He was behind the defender when the ball arrived. The man beside him shook his head. When it was played. Tavek opened his mouth. A third supporter interrupted with an explanation involving grocery queues. A fourth rejected the grocery analogy and offered one using railway platforms. Tavek attempted to reconcile them. By the end, he understood offside less than before. The match went to extra time. Nobody left. Then penalties. The atmosphere changed. Strangers who had spent 2 hours shouting suddenly became quiet enough that Tavek could hear someone breathing beside him. The woman who had assigned him a team grabbed his hand. Her other hand held a complete stranger. Tavek looked down. Varethi hands had longer outer digits than human hands, but she had found a workable grip without discussion. The first penalty went in. The second did too. A miss, a save, another goal. Tavek's chosen side needed one final kick to advance. The player began his run. Tavek realized his own shoulders were tense. The shot went left. The goalkeeper went right. The net moved. Tavek shouted. He did not consciously decide to. Sound simply came out of him. The woman beside him jumped hard enough to hit his shoulder. Someone hugged him from behind. Tavek found himself laughing. Then he saw Marina pushing through the crowd. She stopped 3 meters away. Tavek immediately regained composure. Marina looked at his face, then at the strangers still holding him. She said nothing. Tavek straightened his jacket. I was responding to local social pressure. Marina nodded solemnly. Of course. The sound level encouraged mimicry. Obviously. The hand contact may have contributed. Very scientific. Tavek pointed at her. You were lost. That is unrelated. You were gone for 47 minutes. I took a scenic route. You walked around one building. It was a confusing building. The crowd began another chant. Tavek recognized it. Without thinking, he joined the first line. Marina smiled. Tavek stopped. This proves nothing. Of course. He hated that phrase. It isn't peace. 3 days later, Tavek reviewed police reports. He had not forgotten why the Varethi treated mass emotional gatherings carefully. A fight had broken out outside one stadium. 7 arrests followed another match after supporters damaged transit property. Several online channels had been suspended for nationalist threats. One historically charged fixture required twice the usual security presence. Tavek presented the data to Marina in a conference room. This is what our social models predicted. Marina read the summary, some of it. Your species is deliberately creating temporary high-intensity tribal groups. That is one way to make football sound terrible. It is accurate. Partly. Tavek waited. Marina leaned back. You want me to tell you the ugly parts don't count? Yes. No. He blinked. She pushed the tablet back. People get drunk, people fight. Governments exploit wins, sponsors sell garbage. Some supporters become racist or violent. Football does not magically make humans nice. Tavek had prepared counter-arguments. Her agreement disrupted them. So you acknowledge the risk. Obviously. Yet the event continues. Obviously. That is the part I do not understand. Marina looked at him, then go outside. That is not analysis. It is if your analysis keeps missing the thing happening outside. They took the metro. 2 rival groups boarded the same carriage. Tavek stiffened automatically. The shirts were different colors. The chants were different. One group loudly informed the other that their goalkeeper lacked fundamental competence. The other group responded with comments about the first team's defensive record. Then an elderly passenger entered. Both groups shifted aside. A supporter from one side gave up his seat. At the next stop, everyone began arguing again. Later, Tavek saw 2 men in opposing shirts help a woman lift a stroller up a broken escalator. Nobody treated the cooperation as remarkable. At a restaurant that evening, one table contained 4 people supporting 3 different countries. They shouted over a disputed refereeing decision, ordered dessert together, then resumed shouting. Tavek compared the incidents with the global attendance estimates. Millions in public spaces, billions watching. The disturbances were real, and Tavek refused to pretend otherwise. But measured against millions gathering in public and billions watching, the restraint was larger. The extraordinary thing was not that humans sometimes failed to control rivalry. It was how often they chose to keep it inside the game. He closed the police report, not because it was wrong, but because it was no longer sufficient. The match everyone remembers. Thomas owned a recording nobody needed. Tavek discovered it because the pub was quiet one morning between tournament rounds. Thomas had an old match playing on a small screen behind the bar. The image quality was noticeably inferior to the public archive version. Colors washed slightly toward blue. Commentary contained faint static. Tavek recognized the tournament from the date. You know there is a restored version. Yes. Higher resolution. Yes. Improved sound. Yes. Then why watch this? Thomas looked at him. This is the broadcast we watched. Tavek glanced at the screen again. We. My father and me. Thomas sat down. His usual scarf lay folded beside him. He had that chair. He pointed toward a corner table. Wouldn't let anyone sit there once the match started. Said changing seats during a good spell was bad luck. That is irrational. Yes. You agreed. Of course. Did you move him? No. Tavek looked at the old recording. Thomas remembered the afternoon with absurd precision. The rain outside, his mother making too much food, a cousin spilling a drink during the first goal, his father swearing at the referee in 2 languages, the equalizer, extra time, a missed chance he could still describe 40 years later. Your father supported this team. My father supported whoever made him suffer most. That's how I knew he loved them. Tavek looked at the scarf. Was that his? Thomas's hand moved to it. Yes. Your father is dead. 17 years. Tavek did not apologize. Varethi culture considered apologies for known death an unnecessary reopening of grief. Instead, he asked, do you always watch this recording? Every World Cup. Why? Thomas looked toward the screen. Tavek expected another joke. None came. My granddaughter watches the first 10 minutes with me now. Where is she? Berlin. Why only 10 minutes? She says the picture hurts her eyes. Tavek laughed before realizing he had. Thomas smiled. She's right. On screen, the old crowd roared at something Tavek had not yet learned to anticipate. Thomas's face changed before the goal happened. He remembered it. The image had not arrived yet. The memory had. For once, Tavek did not open his tablet. Quarterfinals. By the quarterfinals, Tavek had opinions. He denied this publicly. Lethri possessed evidence. She sent him a recording of his own comments from a research call. You said, and I quote, "Their midfield spacing is inviting disaster." It was. You also said the manager was stubborn. He was. You objected to a substitution. It was too late. Tavek. What? You are a fan. I am informed. You screamed during a scoreless draw. It was an excellent scoreless draw. Lethri leaned toward her camera. That sentence should frighten you. Marina entered the room carrying a Nigeria shirt over one arm. Her mother had sent it that morning. She's right. Tavek pointed at the shirt. You are wearing that today. Nigeria plays tonight. So you support Nigeria. I support good football. That answer is becoming less credible. Life is difficult. Nigeria's quarterfinal was not easy. Tavek watched with Marina, Thomas, and half the neighborhood. The match remained level until late. Nigeria scored from a quick transition that began with a tackle near midfield. Tavek saw the run developing before the final pass. He was on his feet before the shot. When it went in, Marina shouted directly into his ear. Her mother called before the replay had finished. Marina answered. Tavek heard several relatives screaming through the speaker. 20 minutes later, her Brazilian father called to congratulate her. Very gracious, Tavek observed. Marina muted the call. He's reminding me Brazil is still in. Her father's voice came through anyway. I heard that. Marina unmuted. Good. Her father said something in Portuguese that the translator categorized as affectionate insult. Tavek admired the efficiency. Brazil won its quarterfinal the following evening. Lethri immediately sent Tavek a message. Your statistically neutral bracket survives. He did not respond. He was busy recalculating the semifinals. Semifinal. Nigeria reached the final first. The city noise lasted until dawn. Brazil qualified the next night. Marina's family became unusable. Her mother sent green and white decorations. Her father sent yellow. Her brother sent the split jersey. Marina held it up in disgust. This is a crime. Tavek examined it. It is efficient. You have learned nothing. You can support both teams simultaneously. That is not how finals work. Your previous position was that you support good football. Stop using my own words against me. Tavek smiled. You taught me that. The tournament had spread far beyond Earth by then. Lethri's orbital reports tracked viewing across human settlements. Lunar cities adjusted work breaks. Mars habitats scheduled communal screenings around transmission delay. Deep space stations cached matches for synchronized local viewing. Ships between systems carried results forward. Some crews watched live when communications allowed. Others deliberately avoided news until a delayed recording could be shared. Tavek stared at one traffic graph. They left Earth. Lethri looked up from her display. Who? The humans. That happened some time ago. The tournament did not. Lethri studied him. Tavek expanded the communication map. The event's name still referred to one planet, World Cup, yet its audience occupied several worlds, orbital habitats, and vessels traveling between them. Humans had exported the ritual without changing the name. Lethri smiled. You're making the face. Tavek glared. Marina taught you that. Yes. Unprofessional. Yes. He closed the feed. The final was 48 hours away. His official invitation arrived that evening. The Concord diplomatic viewing suite offered climate control, assigned seating, a private culinary staff, multilingual commentary, security isolation, and an elevated direct view of the main public screen. Tavek accepted automatically. Then he thought about it. For the first time in the entire study, he wondered whether comfort might reduce the quality of the data. That was how he phrased it to himself. He knew he was lying before the final. Tavek declined the diplomatic suite. Lethri called him within 4 minutes. You declined. Yes. The suite has adaptive seating. I have seating. It has 12 cuisine stations. I have food. It has controlled acoustics. That is precisely the problem. Lethri went quiet, then she smiled. Oh. What? You want the crowd? I want representative observation. Of course. Tavek ended the call. Marina laughed for nearly a minute when he told her. They met Thomas in the public square 6 hours before kickoff. He wore his father's scarf. Marina wore the split Nigeria-Brazil jersey under protest. Every third person commented on it. One Nigerian supporter applauded. A Brazilian woman told her it was morally weak. Marina thanked both. Tavek wore neutral clothing. This condition lasted 11 minutes. A child approached carrying face paint. He pointed at Tavek. Which side? I am an observer. The child looked at Marina. She shrugged. Lost cause. The child painted one green stripe on Tavek's left cheek and one yellow stripe on his right. Tavek did not consent quickly enough to prevent this. Are these substances approved for Varethi skin contact? The child had already moved on. Marina took a photograph. Delete that. Absolutely not. Diplomatic implications may exist. Good. The square filled. Families arrived with coolers. Teenagers climbed onto approved viewing structures. Older supporters unfolded portable stools. Flags moved over the crowd like weather. Languages overlapped. Tavek recognized Portuguese, English, Yoruba, Spanish, French, Arabic, and several he could not identify. Thomas found a place near the center. How do you know where to stand? My place. You have never attended a final here. My place anyway. Tavek did not challenge him. By sunset, tens of thousands filled the square. The atmosphere had weight. Tavek's professional mind cataloged exits, crowd density, security lanes, medical teams, emergency barriers, all sensible. Then the teams appeared on the screen. The square changed. Tavek stopped taking notes. The final. Brazil scored first, and the square split instantly between eruption and injury. The move came down the left side, quick enough that even Tavek recognized the danger before the crowd finished rising. The move ended with a low cross. One touch, and a goal before half the crowd had finished rising. Half the square erupted. The other half answered with a sound like something large had been wounded. Marina froze. Tavek looked at her. Which reaction are you having? Yes. Her father called immediately. She rejected the call. He'll be unbearable. Nigeria equalized before halftime. Marina's mother called. She rejected that one too. Fairness. The second half became less a sporting event than a stress test. A Brazilian shot hit the post. Nigeria's goalkeeper made a save that caused three strangers beside Tavek to embrace one another. A disputed foul near the penalty area produced a roar of disapproval from both groups for entirely different reasons. Tavek found himself shouting at the referee. Marina turned toward him. He saw her expression. I know. What? I am no longer claiming procedural observation. Growth. Do not ruin this. The match entered its final minutes level. Tavek had forgotten the research project entirely. Brazil circulated possession along the back line. Nigeria pressed, not recklessly. Tavek saw the shape now. A Nigerian midfielder stayed a few steps deeper than he had earlier. Brazil played wide. The pass inside came too slowly. The midfielder stepped in. The midfielder stepped in and took it cleanly. The entire square seemed to inhale at once. Nigeria moved before Brazil could reset. One pass went forward as the winger sprinted wide, forcing the Brazilian defense to turn and chase. Tavek saw another Nigerian runner crossing the center. He knew what the run was doing. The run pulled a defender with it and opened the lane Tavek could now see before the ball entered it. Middle, Tavek said. Nobody heard him. The winger took the ball toward the edge of the box. One defender closed. The runner dragged another away. The return pass came low and hard. A Nigerian midfielder arrived. The shot left his foot. For a fraction of a second, Tavek experienced the moment alone. The ball crossed the line. The screen showed the net moving. Then the square detonated. The sound struck him physically. People jumped, flags flew, and drinks went into the air as strangers grabbed whoever happened to be within reach. Someone seized Tavek around the shoulders, while Marina screamed beside him. Thomas shouted too, despite having no stake in either team beyond being alive in the same place at the same impossible moment. Tavek lost sight of the screen. He lost his orientation, and lost any possibility of pretending he was separate from what was happening. When he finally looked up, Marina was crying. Her communicator flashed with incoming calls so rapidly the interface could barely display them. Tavek's own research tablet vibrated. Lethri had pushed the global feed to him. He opened it. Lagos was light and bodies and flags. In Rio de Janeiro, thousands stood motionless for several seconds before applause began in scattered pockets. London erupted across neighborhoods miles apart. Bars in New York shook with celebration. Johannesburg streets filled. In Paris, strangers ran into a square carrying Nigerian flags. A lunar mining cafeteria showed workers leaping beneath low gravity until one struck the ceiling and came down laughing. On Mars, two technicians in opposite shirts stood on either side of the same table. One had both hands over his face. The other reached across and squeezed his shoulder. A human survey ship between systems received the delayed goal 4 minutes later. Its crew celebrated after Earth's square had already begun counting down stoppage time. The moment moved outward. It did not move at once, but at the speed communication allowed. A wave made of people learning the same thing and deciding wherever they were that it mattered together. Tavek looked away from the tablet. Beside him, a Nigerian grandfather was crying openly. A Brazilian boy several meters away had buried his face against his mother. The grandfather saw him. For one moment, Tavek expected nothing. Then the old man moved through the crowd, crouched and held out his hand. The boy looked at him. The grandfather said something Tavek could not hear. The child took the hand. The old man helped him stand. Then the final whistle blew. Nigeria had won the World Cup. The square became noise again after the whistle. Celebration did not erase disappointment. Tavek noticed that immediately. Brazilian supporters cried. Some left before the ceremony. Most did not. Nigeria's players collapsed onto the grass. One lay flat on his back, staring upward while teammates jumped over him. Marina finally accepted a call from her mother. The sound coming through the communicator was unintelligible. She laughed. Then she answered her father. He appeared on the screen wearing Brazil colors and an expression of grave injury. "I am fine," he said before Marina could speak. "This sport is stupid. Call me tomorrow." Marina started crying harder. Her father pointed at the screen. "Do not do that. You're crying too." "I have allergies." "It's indoors. Very aggressive allergies." The call ended. Tavek looked toward Thomas. The older man watched the medal ceremony. He had folded his father's scarf over one arm. "You support neither team," Tavek said. "No." "Yet you stayed." Thomas gave him a look. "It's the final." Tavek nodded. He understood enough now not to ask again. Brazil received the runner-up medals. Around them, Nigerian supporters applauded. Not every person, enough that the sound carried. When Nigeria's captain lifted the trophy, the square exploded once more. Flags rose. Marina grabbed Tavek and Thomas together. Tavek allowed it. Hours later, the square emptied slowly. Trash covered the ground. Scarves lay abandoned beneath barriers. People had lost their voices. Children slept on shoulders while parents navigated the crowd. A Brazilian family took a photograph for a Nigerian couple. Two supporters resumed an argument about the referee as they walked toward the metro. The same metro. Tavek looked back once at the giant screen. The tournament graphic had changed to the simplest possible summary of a month that had reorganized schedules, families, cities, and arguments across several worlds. World champions, Nigeria. Tomorrow the city would reopen normally, because humanity could build a planetary ritual enormous enough to stop ordinary life for 90 minutes, and then, somehow, resume ordinary life around the memories it left behind. Schools would resume, people would go back to work, Thomas would clean the pub, Marina would answer several dozen family messages, and the Brazilian boy would eventually stop crying. The grandfather who had helped him up would probably never see him again. Tavek stood in the thinning crowd and realized he had not recorded the final 12 minutes of his own observations. For the first time since arriving on Earth, he had stopped trying to understand the humans long enough to participate with them. He had simply watched. He found that he did not regret the missing data, the report. Tavek deleted the first version of his report. It was technically excellent. He hated it. The document described football as a convergence of identity, ritual, commercial entertainment, social synchronization, controlled rivalry, historical memory, and voluntary affiliation. All correct. All inadequate. Lethri reviewed the deletion notice from Orbit. "You spent 9 days on that draft." "Yes. I corrected 37 formatting errors." "I know. You are a bad person." "Probably." He began again. The second report was shorter. It did not attempt to identify one cause. Instead, it warned future analysts against assuming that large-scale human participation required a single coordinating authority. Football clubs, families, media, sponsors, history, neighborhoods, migration, national identity, individual memory, and even arguments about terminology all mattered. No institution controlled the whole thing, and no single explanation could account for why it endured. That was why Tavek's first models had failed. The conquered had trained him to look for the command structure behind mass coordination. Humanity had built something that could synchronize billions without needing one. It was not leaderless in the simplistic sense. It was layered: family habits, local loyalties, national stories, old griefs, private memories, commercial machinery, and millions of voluntary choices all reinforcing one another without anyone holding the master switch. The final recommendation was practical. Future conquered analysts assigned to human mass events should spend less time in official observation suites and more time standing where the humans stand. Marina read that sentence twice. You could just say you had fun. That would be inappropriate. You had fun. I gathered useful data. You painted your face. I was painted without consultation. You screamed at a referee. The call was questionable. Marina smiled. There he is. Tavek saved the report. Before transmitting it, he added one footnote. Terminology varies by region. Football is globally dominant. Soccer remains common in several countries, especially where other football codes occupy the primary term. Analysts are advised not to attempt correction unless seeking unnecessary conversation. Marina read it. Perfect. That word is rarely appropriate. Still perfect. He transmitted the report. Then he opened the upcoming club schedule, only to remain culturally current: football. 4 months later, Tavek was back on a Varethi station when he heard human commentary coming from a recreation room. He stopped outside the door. 3 junior analysts were watching a club match during their meal break. One noticed him. Senior analyst. Tavek inclined his head. The analyst pointed toward the screen. Is this the human sport called soccer? Tavek looked at the match, then at the analyst. He considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. Depends where you are. The analyst frowned. That does not answer the question. It answers it perfectly. Tavek started to leave. On screen, a striker received the ball 6 meters from goal with only the goalkeeper to beat. The striker shot wide. Tavek groaned. The junior analyst looked at him. Was that bad? Tavek stared at the screen, then he walked into the room and sat down. Move over.